When I wasn't living in New York City, I used to travel quite a bit by car. I found myself in this little town in Delaware called Milford. I had plans down there, not too far in a place called Rehoboth Beach, which I think was like 45 minutes or an hour away. I was supposed to leave the day after, but to avoid getting up early in the morning and leaving, I ended up leaving after work, which was approximately 6 p.m., and taking the drive that night, which lasted about 5 hours and change. Since I was only staying here for an extremely short amount of time, I got myself a motel, which I use all the time when I travel, so I'm pretty comfortable with it. I messaged the guy right before I left to ask if I could rent his $50 little place, which seemed pretty nice from the photos. The guy from the get-go was a little sketchy, and it took me some back and forth to get the place rented that night. After he informed me his father would have dropped the key off, he also informed me there would be quite a bit of tropical plants in the kitchen, and he couldn't move them out on such short notice. Okay, whatever. I'm just looking for a few hours sleep, then I'm out of there in the morning. So I get there around 11 or 11:30 p.m. Not sure how many of you are from or have been to Milford, but it's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. This guy's place was in a tiny gated community which had a total of 15 to 20 houses, maybe pitch black. So I roll up to the place and grab the few items I always travel with: a duffel bag, backpack, jacket, and extra jacket. I use the key code to unlock the lockbox and turn the key, which happens to be the loudest thing that's happening in the surrounding area at the moment. You know when you go to a place where you know some stuff is messed up and you get that gut feeling that maybe you shouldn't be there? Yeah, same feeling. So I put my stuff down on the recliner in front of me, and yes, lo and behold, a lot of tropical plants in the kitchen. I look around this place, which has a pretty decent living room. Bedroom number 1, dolls from the 50s everywhere, twin-sized mattresses with no bed frame and no sheets lay in the middle of the floor. Okay, yeah, forget that room. Go to the next room. Nutcracker figures everywhere, one sheet on the bed, no pillows. I try to turn the light on with the only switch in the room. Oh wait, there is no light in the room at all. The switch goes to nothing. All right, forget this room too. I'll take the couch. At this point I felt pretty uncomfortable, but I knew it was only for the night anyway. I was hungry, so I went to the only thing around that was open, a Food Lion that was closing in like 15 minutes. I grabbed some pizza bites and a peach Snapple. Classy, right? And went back home. I was so put off by this feeling that I set my GoPro I travel with up while I was gone. So I get back to this place, and the first thing I do is look around to make sure everything is in place, just where I left it. That's a good sign. I get my GoPro, take the SD card out, and pop the card in my laptop. I still have the footage somewhere. I wish you guys could have seen this place. It looked like where you would spend your last seconds. Lo and behold, nothing on the footage. At this time, it was well past midnight, and I had a full day of work and a good amount of driving, so I planned to sleep on the very small couch. The apartment had one small 19-inch TV, which didn't have a power cable, and the outlet by the couch was just far enough away that my phone wouldn't reach while charging. This wouldn't have mattered anyway because I had Sprint at the time, and they have poor service to begin with. But where I was, no service. I kept the light on because even though I'm an adult, it gave me some comfort knowing the light was on. Well, after about an hour of lying there, I couldn't sleep, so nature called and I had to use the bathroom. I got up and sat down in the neon yellow, dimly lit bathroom with a shower that had no curtain. Now let me preface all of this by saying the kitchen had hardwood floors, the type where if you slide a chair across it, it makes that screeching noise that we're all familiar with. Remember that. That part will play a role soon. Back to it, I'm in the bathroom doing my business, reading a bottle on the John, because my phone is charging outside of the bathroom, because how convenient. Which didn't matter anyway after all. Like I mentioned, I didn't have service. So I'm sitting there and I hear the chair on the faux hardwood floor screeching across the floor, being pulled gently for about as long as it takes for someone to sit down. I almost threw my heart up. And then, just as I thought it couldn't get any worse, the sound of fingers rhythmically tapping on top of the wooden kitchen table, impatiently getting faster. Frozen. Astounded. Good thing I was already on the toilet. I sat there and repeated to myself 10 or 11 times, "I'm messed up." So I sat there for 2 to 3 minutes and debated what to do. At this point, the tapping had stopped, but I figured that I couldn't stay in there forever. I thought to myself, whoever is out there already knows I'm here, so I decided to forget it. I'm going to go out there and try to fight him off and grab the Bowie knife I carry in my backpack when I travel, and basically try to defend myself because I assume they don't want to play checkers or talk about their day of killing with me. So I rush out of the door and nothing. Nobody there. No sign of anybody. The chairs were not even moved. I did not even bother to check the rest of the place, packed my stuff up as if the place was burning down, got in my car, and drove to my Holiday Inn an hour away at like 3 a.m. I told the guy at the desk what happened, and he let me check into my room that was for like 3 p.m. the next day. A king-sized bedroom, because the room that was reserved for me wasn't even ready. Before we dive into the next story, if you're visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming scary stories. I used to work in a small motel in London, not the nice touristy kind, just an ordinary place where tired travelers stop for a night's rest. My job was straightforward: check guests in and out, tidy rooms, handle complaints, and make sure nothing unusual happened. Most nights were quiet, passing slowly as I sat behind the reception desk, reading magazines and sipping lukewarm coffee to stay awake. One particular evening stands out clearly. It was late November, and outside the windows, London was covered in a misty, cold drizzle. The lobby was quiet and dimly lit, the old heater humming quietly to fight off the chill seeping through gaps around the door. The place felt lonelier than usual, but nothing hinted at the chaos that awaited. It was just past 10 when the lobby door creaked open, ringing the rusty bell that always startled me. I glanced up from my magazine to see a man standing there. He was average height, his hair messy and greasy, sticking out at odd angles. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his clothing looked unkempt, like he'd slept outside for several nights. He glanced around nervously before approaching the desk. I felt an immediate discomfort, but reminded myself it wasn't unusual to see exhausted or troubled people here. I handed him a room key after he quietly paid cash, mumbling something incoherent as he took it. Watching him shuffle off down the hallway, I hoped he'd go straight to sleep, and that would be the end of it. For about an hour, things were calm. I cleaned up around the lobby and tried to relax again, but shortly after midnight, I started hearing strange sounds from the corridor, the scrape of furniture moving in muffled voices. Curious and slightly annoyed, I left the desk to investigate. The hallway was quiet, and when I listened outside his door, nothing could be heard. I shook my head, thinking fatigue was playing tricks on me, and headed back to the lobby. Just as I settled back in my chair, the sound returned, louder and more aggressive than before. A door slammed violently, echoing down the hallway. Heart racing, I got up again and rushed to see what was happening. Before I reached the man's room, the door swung open, startling me badly. There he stood in the dim hallway, eyes wide, breathing heavily. He pushed past me without a word and went straight into another empty room. Confused and worried, I followed cautiously, trying to remain calm. Inside, I found him standing beside the bed, muttering to himself incoherently. He grabbed the mattress, flipped it off the bed frame, and began tearing at the sheets frantically, as if desperately searching for something hidden. I tried to reason with him, asking him to stop, but my words didn't reach him. He continued to destroy the room, tossing pillows, lamps, and bedside tables aside. Feeling helpless, I realized I needed backup. Before I could reach the phone, I heard footsteps in the hallway. My friend Jack, who regularly dropped by to chat during his late-night security patrols nearby. Jack was tall and solidly built, always calm even in stressful situations. Relief flooded over me when I saw him step into the room. Without hesitation, Jack tried calming the stranger down, approaching him slowly and carefully. But the man, instead of calming, lashed out wildly, fists flying and eyes full of rage. Jack was prepared, but the struggle was violent and chaotic. making the small room feel even smaller as they wrestled against the walls and furniture. I stood frozen, heart pounding in panic, unsure of what to do. Then Jack, breathing heavily from the struggle, finally managed to pin the man down against the carpeted floor. He yelled at me urgently, "Call the police now." My hands trembling, I picked up the bedside phone, dialing as quickly as I could manage. The dispatcher sounded calm, asking me questions as Jack kept the man restrained beneath him. It felt like forever, but soon enough, I heard sirens wailing outside, breaking through the quiet night. The police burst in quickly, taking control of the situation. 2 officers carefully lifted the stranger off the floor and secured him in handcuffs. He resisted violently, screaming and thrashing until they finally managed to escort him outside. With him gone, the room suddenly felt eerily quiet, disheveled, and destroyed, a stark reminder of the chaos we just experienced. The rest of the night was a blur of police questioning and reports. Jack sat quietly beside me as we explained repeatedly what had happened. Several guests, disturbed by the noise, gave their statements as well. It turned out the man had been involved in similar incidents before, driven by personal issues and substance abuse. Knowing the truth did little to ease my anxiety about that night. Afterward, I sat in the lobby again, the heater humming as if nothing had happened. Dawn came slowly, the mist outside thinning as daylight finally appeared. My shift ended quietly, and as I walked home, fatigue heavy in my bones, I realized how vulnerable we could feel, even in familiar surroundings. Though I continued working at the motel, every late shift afterward brought a quiet dread. Each time the lobby door creaked open, my heart jumped nervously. That strange man's desperate eyes haunted my memories, a reminder of how easily a normal night could turn into something terrifying. A few years ago, when I was in high school, my history class took a trip to Belgium. We were all GCSE students, excited for the adventure ahead. But little did we know, this trip would turn out to be one we'd never forget, for all the wrong reasons. It all began when our bus pulled up to a rundown motel on the outskirts of a small town. The building looked ancient, with paint peeling off the walls and ivy creeping up the sides. Our teacher, Mr. Thompson, assured us it was the only place available for miles around, so we reluctantly filed inside. As we checked in, the receptionist gave us a set of keys with a warning to stay out of the basement. It was an odd request, but we shrugged it off, too eager to explore the town to dwell on it. We were assigned the only room on the top floor, which meant a long climb up creaky stairs. The hallway was dimly lit, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease as we reached our room. Inside, the atmosphere was musty and stale. The furniture looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1970s, and the curtains were threadbare, barely keeping out the fading light. We quickly claimed our beds, but no one seemed eager to explore the rest of the motel. As night fell, the darkness outside seemed to seep into our room, making it feel even more claustrophobic. Mr. Thompson tried to lighten the mood by suggesting we order some food and watch a movie, but the tension lingered in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every creak of the floorboards and every rustle of the curtains sent shivers down my spine. When someone mentioned needing to use the bathroom, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. The bathroom was small and dingy, with cracked tiles and flickering lights. I hesitated to go in alone, but my bladder won out over my fear. As I washed my hands, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, as if someone or something was lurking just beyond the cracked door. I hurried back to the safety of our room, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling in the pit of my stomach. When I mentioned it to my classmates, they laughed it off, attributing it to nerves and the creepy surroundings. But as the night wore on, strange things began to happen. Objects moved on their own, strange noises echoed through the halls, and a chill settled over the room that had nothing to do with the weather outside. We tried to rationalize it away, blaming it on the old building and our overactive imaginations. But deep down, we all knew something was wrong. Then, just as we were starting to relax and drift off to sleep, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence. We all shot up in bed, hearts pounding, as we listened to the sound echoing through the motel. Without a word, we scrambled out of bed and huddled together in the center of the room, too terrified to move. Mr. Thompson tried to reassure us, but even he couldn't hide the fear in his eyes. We debated calling the police, but without knowing where the scream had come from, we were hesitant to leave the safety of our room. So we sat in terrified silence, listening for any sign of danger. But as the minutes turned into hours, the fear began to fade, replaced by a sense of exhaustion. Eventually, we drifted off to sleep, too tired to keep our eyes open any longer. When we woke up the next morning, the motel was eerily quiet. There were no signs of the commotion from the night before, no evidence that anything out of the ordinary had happened. We gathered our things in silence, too shaken to speak. As we made our way back to the bus, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were leaving something behind, something dark and sinister lurking in the shadows of that rundown motel. As we drove away, I glanced back at the building, feeling a chill run down my spine. As we disappeared around a bend in the road, I couldn't help but wonder what other horrors lay hidden in the darkness, waiting to be uncovered by unsuspecting travelers like us.